Blitz Gigamobile Astrum makes another feature on this channel because I have something new to show you guys. I have taken both Shadow Army and Astrum here itself and made it together to create this harmonious deck profile you're getting today. Before I even get this video started, for my POCs and for anybody with long hair, you already know what this is. We just gonna get this out the way. Yes, I'm wearing a bonnet. I didn't feel camera ready, and at the same time, I didn't want to take enough time to get this video started before I got my hair done or my hair cut. I haven't decided yet. Therefore, yes, I have a bonnet. I'm wearing a bonnet. Say what you will, the bonnet is here to stay. Now back to the main topic of Astrum. Astrum at this point has become, like Triumph Dragon, one of the laughing stocks of the 6-star trial decks. I've already discussed how I feel about it a long time ago in my review. I discussed where it stands in the 1 month video, and I figured with this deck being so low on the totem pole, why not just take a little bit more time and invest in it? I haven't been doing much of playing Vanguard anyway, so I'm playing a lot casually, and having the opportunity to take a look at decks that in a nation that I really don't explore, like Brandt Gate, has been exciting to see. Now with Astrum, however, I had to do a lot of research into this guy, because let me tell you something. Everything that I saw for it that is currently out right now, I do not like, and the content that is there for it that I do like, I'll have the same thing to say about this. It seems that this deck is extremely linear in terms of build, and people are not exploring it, and I don't blame them. It's a trial deck Vanguard. Why would you waste time on that when there's so many other better decks? Now, while playing this deck, I was using the generic version that I posted on my 1 month video, and I also played different variations that I've seen on other people use, as well as watching winning lists. But one thing I realized very quickly is that when going through some of these lists, one of them that really stuck out to me was a Shadow Army list. Being able to take advantage of the Shadow Army tokens in the early game to make your early game fix, give you bigger bodies onto the board, as well as also set up your set orders for you using your effects that work with this, and having a main boss unit to support your Vanguard to help win you the games was actually pretty interesting to see. Now, having played it in real time, I will say that this deck is definitely not breaking Astrum by any means necessary, but it does give the deck a unique way of actually approaching certain matchups, and it gives it something to do with a set win condition for how the deck wants to play. Now, Astrum is so generic that it can really work with anything in Brandt Gate, but I think that these Shadow Army cards have been really fantastic for this deck to play. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down in depth everything so you understand my thought process while putting all of this together. And while you're watching this deck profile, if you enjoy seeing content like this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do not forget to hit the notification bell so you guys are always up to date on my newest videos coming out. Alright y'all, to get the deck profile started off with, I am playing the Cardinal Ride line for Astrum now. Now, with the world cards being incorporated to our playstyle for Astrum for this deck, it is very important that we're able to filter out our deck and start setting up those world orders. Generating those Shadow Army tokens as well as getting to Abyssal Dark Knight as soon as possible is extremely important for Astrum, as this is how we'll be able to unlock the other Shadow Army token generation effects from our other generic support cards. You don't need the other Astrum order that it came with or any other world orders besides the one I'm going to showcase into the deck moving forward, but I do think it's best just to take advantage of the benefits that you get from the world cards, as they don't have any other cost and they do improve your offense in the early game. Next up, I have 3 copies of the Man of the Hour Blitz Gigamobile Astrum. Now, Blitz Gigamobile Astrum is the star of this deck as its Vanguard. Being able to take advantage of its effect to search out its Persona Red copy and being a generic multi-attacker is fantastic. The great thing about Astrum's restanding effect is that it applies 5,000 power both to itself and the unit standing. This way, if our opponent pulls defensive triggers or we have any sort of other effects going on with our unit to improve its critical or maybe power, you'll be able to fix your numbers so that this way on your later wave of attacks, they'll still be magic numbers against your opponent. And with the guaranteed Persona Ride of turn 4, you're able to confirm the fact that you're going to have a push turn afterwards, setting up other pieces, drawing you more cards, and then being able to continuously push on the turn after you get done with your multi-attack with Astrum. The issue with Astrum in the generic build prior to discovering this one is the fact that it requires so much setup with the other cards and the Astrum order with how expensive it was. This build won't have that issue, and as you can see with future support cards in this deck and our winning image, we'll be able to take advantage of these cards continuously without worrying about counterblast and other resources getting in our way. And for the MVP of the grade 3s, I am playing 4 copies of Cardinal Draco Masuria. Now, Masuria is the MVP of our grade 3 lineup because of its effect. Starting off, it states act Rearguard Circle, cost retire a Shadow Army token, and this unit gets power plus 10,000 till the end of turn. If this ability was activated for the 3rd time this turn, this unit gets critical plus 1 until end of turn. Now, Masora is our deck's win condition. Combining this unit's effect with Astrum gives us a double high-powered critical attack against our opponent. Masora being able to convert those Shadow Army tokens in additional power is fantastic because of all the amount of Shadow Army generations that we have in this deck. Being able to take advantage of that additional power and then get a double critical strike prior to triggers and effects means that our opponent will have to guard 2 attacks in the later game to prevent getting hit by this critical damage. Once they hit the 4 damage threshold, or even 3, that's when they're going to start dropping more cards to defend. This actually gives much more pressure to Astrum's attack patterns compared to its generic build, where you're relying on the high power and consistency of that build to help you win your games. With this one, you're able to rely on Masora's effect, as well as the fact that you pushed a little bit harder in the early game compared to the generic version, to get your opponent up to 3 to 4 damage, and then pressure with Masora's effect, your criticals, and then the threats of other triggers hitting your opponent. Now, moving on to grade 2s, I am playing 4 copies of the Eclipse Moonlight World set order. Now, the Eclipse Moonlight World set order is the one that lets you counterblast 1 and generate a Shadow Army token. It is super important in this deck that we generate as many Shadow Army tokens as possible consistently with Masora. This way we can get ones in the early game to start attacking our opponent with, and then start setting up the cost targets for Masora's effect to get that double critical play off. You don't until Abyssal Dark Knight until you get 2 of these active, but thanks to our ride line, we're always guaranteed 1 in the beginning, and then we'll have plenty of ways of drawing or searching out the second copy of our world. So once we get the second one set up, we'll be all good to go for all of our Abyssal Dark Knight plays, and then any future ones will just be used as fodder to get more Shadow Army tokens onto the field. You don't need to play any of the other ones. The one that lets you Soul Blast 1 and draw is pointless. The already 3 that gives 5k to the Shadow Army tokens, I don't think it's necessary, because most of the time your Shadow Army tokens, you won't have that many on the field, and they're all going to get eaten up anyway. And then as far as the other one lets you Soul Blast 1 and retire, I don't really think that's helpful for this deck. This is an aggro-based deck, and you're trying to win this game as soon as possible once you go into Astrum and you set up Masora. For my next grade 2, I am playing 4 copies of Cardinal Fang Dai. Cardinal Fang Dai is another generic Shadow Army token generator for this deck. This one has the ability to counterblast 1 and get you a Shadow Army token once you're in Abyssal Dark Knight. Next up, I'm playing 4 copies of the Sickle Blade of Inquest Habitable Zone. Habitable Zone is our ride cycler for this deck. We are very reliant on this card's ability to draw more cards in the early game, as well as its second skill in the late game is pretty important as well. It'll help us set up those free Shadow Army token generators. If we played another order in this deck, maybe in the future, if I change it, then we can also use that as well to compress some more. But being able to search on order, get a free Shadow Army token, and set up the board is pretty fantastic. But the drawing is really the most important thing, as this deck does not have the best card advantage outside of a card like this, and then maybe Astrum's ability and our triggers. Therefore, we have to get the best way of generating any sort of card advantage that we can in the early game. Moving on to grade 1s, I'm playing 4 Sentinels. Make sure that one of these is Elementaria. This meta demands it. My next grade 1 is 4 copies of Cardinal Principal Cogula. Now, Cogula, in my opinion, is the best Shadow Army token generator outside of Dai in this deck. Being able to give you a Soul Charger 2, it replenishes the cost of some of the effects that we do have in this deck that are reliant on our soul, as well as the fact that it sets up her own cost for her second ability. She can convert herself into a Shadow Army token if you are on Abyssal Dark Knight, which is when you have the 2 worlds set up, and then get you more Shadow Army tokens onto the field without a heavy cost. Cagula does this as well, same thing as Dai. It's another Shadow Army token generator in the deck. This already gives you a total of 12 different cards that make Shadow Army tokens, this being one of the cheaper ones without having counterblast on it and refilling up your resources. For my next grade 1, I am playing 4 copies of Detonation Mutant Bumblemine. Now, in this deck, we do use a lot of CB. Our Astrum costs a CB, our Worlds cost CB, Dai cost CB. It's very important to have some form of counter charge in this deck, otherwise you will burn out of resources very fast in terms of CB. You don't want that to happen. We need to set up our Worlds, obviously search up our Sunrise with Astrum. It's very important that we do that. I am aware that at this time, Progress Globe Dragon does exist, which is the other counter charger directly for Astrum. However, the main reason why I am not playing that card instead of Bumblemine is because Bumblemine refills up our soul despite us having Cogula, and Bumblemine also gets its effect active earlier than Progress Globe does. Progress Globe doesn't start getting active until you restand something with Astrum, and this just gets active when you have a set order, at least in your order zone. So naturally, I want to make sure I have Counter Blast available to me prior to going into Astrum ever, if I'm in that situation, and therefore it's just better to have Bubble Mine to get that early counter charge than having to wait later to get Astrum active with Progress Globe. For my next grade 1, I play 2 copies of Cardinal Principal Lorefield. Lorefield is another Shadow Army token generator, but I do want to say this, Lorefield is the most expendable Shadow Army token generator. I think another one that just might simply be a little bit better is the grade 3 Cardinal Draco Nuvoria. It's another Shadow Army token generator, but the difference between Nuvoria and Lorefield is the fact that Nuvoria can be used as an offensive piece, and it's a free Shadow Army token generator when called over. Lorefield lets you call a Shadow Army token in the same column as her. So therefore, it does make up some awkward plays sometimes. The main reason why I chose Lorefield over Nuvoria is because Lorefield is a grade 1 that's got the 5k shield. That's actually the main reason why. I didn't want to play an insane amount of grade 3s and orders in a Brandt Gate deck. I know it sounds crazy because this deck was already fragile as a generic deck, and now putting the different engine into this to make it work, that's very piece reliant. I didn't want to be even more fragile or fragiler. They both get the job done, but I do think that if you have 2 copies of Nuvoria and you want to try this deck out, definitely, switch between the 2 and see which one makes you feel better. Nuvoria is free and will get you double Shadow Army tokens. Lorefield is a body that stays on the board and gets you a Shadow Army token. For my last grade 1, I play 1 copy of White Jeweled Beast Synthetica. Now with 1 card available in the deck for normal units, I played Synthetica because it's essentially a 5th copy of your World Orders. It is extremely important that we have every single way possible to generate Shadow Army tokens. Synthetica's first ability to convert your Ride deck cards into a set order from your drop zone to your hand means that if we've ever dropped any of our World cards to Ride up, like we didn't have a Zone or something of that nature, we have a 5th copy of the order that we are looking for. Also, the defensive skill doesn't hurt as well because this deck does not generate a huge hand, so who doesn't want to have an extra 20k shield? Now for triggers, I'm playing 4 generic crits, the Blitz ones, and then 4 copies of the effect criticals. The effect criticals actually do matter in this deck only for matchup purposes. If you play against Prison, with the Prison having the new stuff now, and you don't have any way of generating solo, they start getting rid of your triggers, you're going to want a way to convert those into something. 3 copies of Ameliorate Connector. This deck is extremely piece reliant. You have to find Masurias, you have to find Shadow Army token generators, you need to find your World Orders outside of the Ride line. It's very important that you draw into certain pieces, and I actually do think that because of how this deck works, maybe a 4th draw trigger might not be a bad idea. Masuria already has a crit on it, and that's your key winning piece anyway, so really wanting to draw into that card is going to be extremely important for your strategy, but for right now, 3 draws has been just fine. For our over trigger, I'm playing 1 copy of Elder Breath. Best OT in the game in my opinion. Brandt Gate really did hit the nuts with this one. And then for heals, if you've been following me long enough, you know that I always keep it nice and simple with generic heals. I'm not against effect heals, especially in this current meta, because it's very predictable what it is. But if you want to split between 2 of the generic ones and then 2 of the ones that let you restand, you can definitely do that. I actually think that's very plausible right now. However, I like just the generic heals for this deck, but that is an option to play. That concludes today's video, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned throughout the entirety of it, and thank you so much for your patience on the Prime Vanguard channel. I am slowly trying to push out content. My life is getting a little bit more back on track between school and Vanguard, so I've been doing my best to get out what I can, but with the introduction of more stuff from Illusional Strife coming out, I'll have much to talk about for the month of July. With that being said, y'all have a great day, card fighters, and I'll catch you later. Peace.